What's up, YouTube, and welcome to Codename Scream. I am that horror guy, and if you are just joining us, please make sure to go ahead, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications for all things horror. Welcome to another episode of With That Being Said. Last week, I opted to take a fan submission and cover the original Evil Dead next to the reboot of Evil Dead from 2013. If you did not take a look at that video, please make sure to go back and watch it. I did leave a description below for you guys. We threw things off a little bit. Normally, with how we do this series is we like to take the horror contender from Slashathon, which is the other series we run here, and we like to cover their original and remake if applicable. Throwing it off a little bit was a lot of fun for me, and I thought, why not? Let's do it one more time and knock out the one question I get asked repeatedly as both a horror fan and as a host of a horror channel is, what's the one film that's truly scared you, or even left an impression if nothing's actually scared you? And that's what we're going to go ahead and cover today. So the one film that actually has left an impression on me and has scared me to some degree is 2008's The Strangers. And I know a lot of you are probably just sitting there thinking, really? That, of all movies, is what bothers you. We've seen the shirts you wear. We've heard the films you like to talk about on the live streams on Codename Reaction. Yeah, but let's go ahead and go into exactly why that movie bothers me and discuss it a little more in depth beyond that. So, The Strangers from 2008 was released May 30th in the US and August 29th in the UK. It was shot for a $9 million budget. It grossed $82.4 million in the box office total. If you were to adjust that for 2021 inflation, you'd be looking at about $99 million. So not a huge change from when it was actually in theaters and whatnot, but still a considerable amount of money made on such a small budget. So definitely a success on the studio side of things. It's written and directed by Brian Bertino, produced by Doug Davison, Roy Lee, and Nathan Kahane. Stars Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman as our main protagonists here. The film bases around the two of them, which is Kristen McKay and James Hoyt, played by Liv Tyler and Scott Speedman. They decide to go out to his childhood summer home after a wedding that they attend together. There's a lot of tension between the two of them. He had proposed to her during the reception, to which she actually did not accept. And so they're just kind of discussing what's going to happen moving forward and whatnot. About 4 o'clock in the morning, he decides to call his friend Mike to come pick him up. From there, he's going home. He has nothing to do with it. She's more than welcome to stay, he even says. Right around then, they get a knock on the door from a young blonde girl that asks if Tamra's home. They tell her there's nobody by that name that lives here. She asks, are you sure? Yeah. Close the door. Kristen states that she needs a pack of cigarettes, so James goes off and decides he's going to go and get that for her. During that time, we start to get the three masked people throughout. The man in the mask, as he's credited as, is watching Kristen from afar in a hallway, which is one of the most terrifying parts of the film. She's just in the kitchen, minding her own business, having a cigarette, and just right there in the background, he's just standing there. Doesn't move, nothing, just standing there and watching her. And the only time he moves is when she starts to turn in his direction. Earlier they had a smoke alarm that had gone off. She had taken it down. Where it was on the floor, now it's sitting on a chair. And she realizes then, okay, someone's actually been in this house. She goes to look for her cell phone, can't find it anywhere. So then she hears a noise coming from the outside, opens up a curtain, and that's when she sees the man in the mask. Bumps into a record player, it starts skipping. The song that's playing in there, that whole entire segment is just so creepy. And while she's doing that, at the front door, you've got the young blonde girl that's now wearing a doll face mask, and she's trying to come in with a knife. So she runs, barricades herself in the room, in their bedroom, as these just noises coming from the outside, banging on the side of the house and whatnot. And James comes back from getting her her cigarettes, and she even says, "There's somebody outside. There's people outside. We need to go." So they decide, all right, we're leaving. Get out to the house, outside of the house, and the young blonde girl in the doll face mask is standing watching them. They go to get in his car. They get rear-ended with a truck with a third masked person. This time it's a pinup girl mask. And it just goes into this whole ordeal. Mike, the friend that James had phoned earlier on in the beginning of the film, does show up and notices that the car is messed up and vandalized, ransacked, and whatnot. So he goes to go look inside the house to see what's going on. James mistakes him for one of the masked people and accidentally shoots him, kills him. And there's a part later on where some of the masked people had actually taken some of the blood and wrote murderer or something to that degree. It just goes and spirals on out from there. We're not going to go any further beyond that. We get to pretty much the climax of the film, where we have both Kristen and James bound to chairs in the living room, and the three masked individuals are standing after terrorizing them for an entire night. And Kristen asks, why did you do this? And the one says, because you were home. And then they unmask themselves, which we don't get to see their faces, which adds to the creepy factor of this, and then they proceed to kill them. At the very end of the film, two young Mormon boys come up to the house, and they're riding their bikes, and they're dropping off pamphlets at the houses, and the young blonde girl comes out and asks if she can have one of the cards, and one of the boys asks, are you a sinner? And she says, sometimes. They give her a pamphlet. The pinup girl, as they're pulling away, says it'll be easier next time. So this wasn't going to be the first time they did this, and who knows how many times they're going to plan to do this moving forward. The young Mormon boys go in the house, see blood everywhere, call the police, and they see Kristen, and when they reach out to her, she's still alive, and reaches out, grabbing his hand, starts screaming, cut. Film ends right then and there. The film itself just left a very unsettling feeling to me. Director-writer Brian Bertino did state that the film was loosely based on the Manson Tate murders, and that was one of the things that when I had left the theater, for years I'd even been saying it just was very reminiscent of Manson. Upon doing the research for this episode, I did see that that was actually part of the inspiration of the film, so that just added to it being absolutely creepy. There was when he was a kid, there was an experience he had, and the quote that he had for that was, as a kid, I lived in a house on a street in the middle of nowhere. One night while our parents were out, somebody knocked on the front door. My little sister answered it. At the door were some people asking for somebody who didn't live there. We later found out that these people were knocking on doors in the area, and if no one was home, breaking into the houses. So that was the main inspiration behind this. And then, obviously, the Manson Tate side of things. And the film itself, when they went into shooting, Liv Tyler ended up getting tonsillitis while on set from just the mass amount of screaming she had to do for the role. She was actually sought out specifically by the director, and she fell in love with the script and read the whole thing when she was on a flight from Japan to LA to then go to shoot the film. Same with Scott Speedman. He was sought out for it, and Scott loved the fact that you got to really kind of connect with the two characters prior to the violence and the macabre coming in. When they did shoot the film, Liv Tyler specifically did not want to see any of the people in the masks ahead of time. She actually wanted to be scared. And get the legitimate reaction. And that was something reminiscent that Tobe Hooper used to do, specifically with the 74 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. That was something he had done intentionally, where he kept the cast from seeing Gunnar Hansen dressed as Leatherface to get the true terror, not just the acting. And that's, for me, that's always a huge plus when it comes to these films, as if it's an actual reaction, not just acting. It adds to it and makes it that much more frightening to me. And there's even an interview in the release for the film on the DVD and Blu-ray release, where the actress that portrayed the pinup girl she even goes on to recount the first time that her and Liv Tyler come together when she's stalking her in the backyard, and just the sheer terror that was coming from Liv, and just she's like, it's just blood curdling, bone chilling, absolutely terrifying. I agree. That whole scene was just very uncomfortable. The film had a absolutely fantastic score from Tom and Andy. They've been a huge staple in modern horror as of late, most notably in the Sinister 2 soundtrack. That was their huge claim to fame. The thing I appreciate about their scores, it's reminiscent of 80s, but has just a little bit of your modern day flair in there. So it's unsettling, but it's kind of poppy. It's got a little bit of everything going on for it. One of the things that actually inspired the music for this channel was Tom and Andy. So kudos, guys. Way to do it. When the film was released, initially it had a summer release planned for it. It got postponed a few different times before it actually did come out in 2008. It was actually about just shy of a full year. It was initially looked to come out in July of 2007, and after multiple postponed dates, it finally got its release in 2008. It did not settle well with critics by any means, and even with Rotten Tomatoes, they hold it at a 48% rating based on 164 reviews. Most notably, with some of the reviews, Roger Ebert gave the film 1.5 stars out of 4. And he went on to quote, "The movie deserves more stars for its bottom line craft, but all the craft in the world can't redeem its story." And that was just one of many poor reviews on the film. But there was also some really good and positive ones along the way. The New York Times actually went on to state that it was suspenseful, highly effective, smartly maintains its commitment to tingling creepiness over bludgeoning horror. Another one that I actually appreciated was The Hollywood Reporter. Actually called the film a creepily atmospheric psychological thriller with a death grip on the psychological aspects. That was something that really stood out for me, because at the end of the day with this movie, I don't want people to get confused. It's not the film itself that actually scared me. It's the feelings that I had leaving the theater, and even purchasing it and bringing it home and watching it again, and the multiple times I've sat through it. As terrified of the film as I can be, I'll still watch it from time to time. Face your fears, But it's not the movie itself, it's the feelings that I get post-film. And that for me is a true testament of art and horror in itself. You don't get that much anymore. We're so focused on over-the-top gore, over-the-top shock value. You don't really get those true, genuine, terrifying feelings, I feel, anymore. And it could just be that we may, as a society, have kind of grown numb to those things, because there are more frightening things going on outside. You just open your door and there's more terrifying things going on out there than Hollywood's been giving us. You never really know. But either way, the film did end up getting a sequel in 2018, The Strangers Prey at Night. I haven't touched base too much on that one as of yet. I do have a copy of it. It's just a matter of, how the first one settles with me. Can I really sit through a second one? You know what? We'll see how we feel here at the end of this week and after this goes. But that's what I have as far as this movie's concerned. What did you guys think of this? And at the end of the day, I'm going to flip the role here. What movie really scares you? Comment below, send me an email, message on Instagram or Twitter. Tell me what movies truly terrify you. What's something that left an impression on you? And I may actually go in and cover some of these films down the line and consider them as a submission. Moving forward with this series, with that being said, it'll be strictly fan submissions. Once we run Slashathon out, whatever you guys send to me, that's what we're going to be covering. The first run post Slashathon I'm going to do for you guys is my top 5 of all-time horror films. So keep an eye out for that. It's going to be a really good time to go back and relive some of these movies. And I have covered a couple of them so far, but to actually go and deep dive and do a lot of research, it's going to be a lot of fun for you guys. Make sure to get in your last minute votes here for Slashathon on the Jason versus Kemper episode from last week. I will be announcing the winner for that on Tuesday, and whomever advances from that episode will take on either Ghostface or the Gainesville Ripper, who will be Tuesday's matchup. So you don't want to miss out on that whatsoever. So until then, scare you later, YouTube.